Teacher Anthony. Just want to take you through biology. Biology. Yeah, Vin, it's about biology. Vin, it's about biology. So we just want to learn about reproduction. Reproduction. We just want to learn about reproduction in plants and animals. Now, first of all, you have to understand first that reproduction is a characteristic of living things, right? Or living organisms. Now, in our last class, we talked about sexual reproduction, in plants. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about today. It's a long topic, but we're going to break it into bits. Now, reproduction in plants and animals, specifically sexual reproduction in plants. Sexual reproduction in plants. Sexual reproduction in plants. And we say that the basis, what is the basis of reproduction? Before we talk about reproduction, so what's the basis of reproduction? The basis of reproduction very well is cell division. How many types of cell division do we have? We have two. Nice. Which one and which one? Mitosis and meiosis. Very good. Now, of the two types of cell division, which one do we end up having is equivalent to the number of chromosomes in the parent cell, right? Very good. Now, we talked about sexual reproduction in plants, and specifically, we want to talk about this, but let's do what you call a recap, then we continue. So, we said that there is that organ in a plant whereby we see reproduction taking place. Which organ? Which is the main organ whereby we have the reproductive cells being produced? Which organ do we see the reproductive cells being produced in plant? In plant. Which organ? The flower. The flower. The stem? Really? Stem? Stem having reproductive organs? So we say the flower. Huh? That was like the stem. But it's good. Very good. Thank you for trying. Now the flower. So the flower is made up of parts, which you call them the floral parts. Okay, so we had a sketch of the flower. So this was a sketch of the flower. So this is a flower. So it's the organ that is involved in reproduction in plants. Okay, so this is a flower, and is the organ that produces the reproductive cells. Now, so we have some parts. Let's name some of the parts that you can see in this flower. So what do you call this part? What do you call that part? We call it the flower stalk. So this is the flower stalk. So we call it the flower stalk. Now, what do you call this other part here? What do you call this part here, just above the flower stalk? Just above the flower stalk. What do you call that part, just above the flower stalk? We call it the receptacle. Nice. Receptacle. Receptacle is just above the flower stalk. Receptacle is just above the flower stalk. You know, the flower stalk actually attaches to the branch or the stem. Now, what do you call this part here? What do you call that part? We call it the ovary. Very good. That is superb. We call it the ovary. So that's the ovary. So how about this part here? sepal. So one, we call it sepal. How about group of sepals? Group of sepals, you call them the calyx. Calyx. Group of sepals, you call them the calyx, right? Now, so what do you call this part here? What do you call this part? Joven, what do you call this part? We call it the style. So it's known as the style. So how about this one? Call it the filament. Now, how about this part here? Anther. So that is the anther. Now, how about this part here? We call it the stigma. We call it the stigma. How about this part? The petal. Or group of petals, you can call them what? Corolla. You can call them the corolla. Now, so these flower parts, or you call them the floral parts, are divided into 4 groups. The flower parts or the floral parts, we call them the floral parts, are divided into 4 groups. Okay? So they are divided into 4 groups. The floral parts or the flower parts are divided into 4, or the flower parts, floral parts. So we have 4 floral parts. Now one of the floral parts, we call it the calyx. Calyx. Calyx are just but group of sepals. Calyx are just but group of sepals. So we call them the calyx. So that is one part of the floral part. So what? Petals. The corolla, or you can talk about the petals. The petals. Another thing we can talk about this. Stamens collectively are referred to as androecium. Then we have the other part, which we call it the carpel. So we have 4 parts. So the calyx, corolla, stamens, carpels, and the androecium, which is now the stamen. Now we said that this of the anther. So when you're talking about the stamen, so the stamen comprises of the anther, and the filament. So that's what you call the stamen. Okay? The stamen comprises of the anther and the filament. Okay? Now let me talk a bit. I'm just doing a recap just a bit. Let's talk about what you call the anther. So the anther produces pollen grains. The anther produces pollen grains. The anther produces pollen grains. Now the pollen grains are the male gamete of a flower or of a plant. These are the male gamete. These are the male gamete. The pollen grains. So what produces the pollen grains? The anthers. Okay? Now where are the pollen grains contained? Now the anther, when you look at the anther, let's look at the structure of the anther, then I proceed. Let's look at the structure of the anther. So let's look at the structure of the anther. So the anther is supported, it is held in position. The anther is held in position by what we call what? The filament. So the filament holds the anther in position. So we have the anther here. Okay? So this is the filament. So this is the anther. So the anther is held in position by the filament. So this is the anther. So the anther is made up of what we call pollen sacs. Okay? So the anther is made up of what we call the pollen sacs. Pollen sacs. And these pollen sacs are 4 in number, 4 pollen sacs. And the pollen sacs looks like this. That is, in every anther, we have what we call pollen sac.
Oh.
Yeah, so we have pollen sac. We have pollen sac. So we have pollen sac. So every anther has a pollen sac. So that is exactly what is called the pollen sac. My drawing is not that good, but really tried, you know. So we have the pollen sacs. We have 4 of them. So every anther has got a pollen sac. So this is a pollen sac. Now, so these are what we call pollen grains. So pollen grains. So we have the pollen grains, and this is what we call a pollen sac. If it is one pollen sac, but many pollen sacs. Okay? So every anther has pollen sacs. How many pollen sacs do you have in an anther?
4.
Yeah, 4. Now the pollen sacs contains what? Pollen grains. And the pollen grains are the male gametes. Very good. Are the male gametes. That is it. So if it comes in an exam, then they draw a diagram like this. Then they ask you to name the diagram. So it represents the pollen sacs. If it is one pollen sac, so we have it like 1, 2, 3, then 4. So each pollen sac has pollen grains, right? Each pollen sac has got pollen grains. So what is the work of the filament? To hold or to support the anther, to hold the anther in position. To hold the anther in position. That's what we call a filament. So it holds the anther in position. Okay? So the filament holds the anther in position. Now, let me talk about the female part. What name do you give to the female part of the flower? What name do you give to the female part of the flower? The pistil, carpel, or gynoecium. Now let's talk about the pistil. Or it is gymnasium? Gymnastic? Gynoecium, right? So pistil, or call the carpel, or you can just call it what? Gynoecium. Gynoecium. Very good. So what makes the gynoecium or the pistil or the carpel? Now, so we have the stigma. So we have a structure like this, which we call the stigma. So we have the stigma. We have the style. So we call it the style. So this part we call it what? The ovary. So inside the ovary we have what we call what? Ovules. So the ovules, they normally develop into what we call the seeds, right? So we have the ovules, and in the ovules, now that's where we have the female part, the female gamete. Now that's the female gamete. So the female gamete are found in the ovules. So these are just but ovules. So we call them the ovules. The ovules normally develops into seeds. So these are ovules and so on. So what is the work of stigma? What is the work of stigma? To receive pollen grains. Very good. So that is the work of stigma, to receive pollen grains. Okay? Pollen grains from where? From the anther. Right? Now what is the work of the style? To hold the stigma in position. That's very good. To hold the stigma in position. And in the ovary, we have the ovules, and in the ovules, we have the female gamete. So what makes the pistil or the carpel or the gynoecium? Stigma, style, and the ovary. Very good. Now let's continue and talk about types of flowers. Now let's talk about types of flowers. Let's move on and talk about types of flowers. Let's talk about types of flowers. Let's talk about types of flowers. Let's talk about types of flowers. Types of flowers. We said number one type of flower, we call it complete flower. We have what we call complete flower. Complete flower. We can call it complete flower, or we can call it what? Bisexual flower. That's good. Bisexual flower. Bisexual flower. Or we can call it what? Hermaphrodite. 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 Hermaphrodite flower. Talking about complete flower or a bisexual. Bi means what? Two, right? Hermaphrodite also talks about two. We're talking about two at the same time. So, complete flower or a bisexual flower or hermaphrodite flower is a flower with all. So these are flower with all the floral parts. Floral parts or the flower parts. So which are the flower parts we are talking about? Flower parts? Sepals or the calyx, the androecium, gynoecium, and the corolla, or we call them the petals. So a flower with all the floral parts actually are referred to as complete flowers. Exactly, complete flower. So that is a type of a flower. That's a type of a flower. So you call it complete flower. That's a complete flower. Now let's talk about another type of a flower. Let's talk about another type of a flower. Let's talk about another type of a flower. So let's talk about another type of a flower. Another type of a flower, you know? Number two? In the what? Incomplete flower. Very good. So we have incomplete. We call it incomplete flower, or the other name? Unisexual. Exactly. So you can call it unisexual flower. Unisexual flower. So you can talk about unisexual flower. So you can call it incomplete flower or a unisexual flower. So what do you mean by incomplete flower or a unisexual flower? So flowers with flowers with either male or female parts only. Flower with either male or female part only. Flower with either male or female part only. So there's something I would like us to talk about concerning that area. There's something I would like us to talk about concerning that area, which is very, very key. Which is very, very key about unisexual flower. I want us to talk much about unisexual flower. There are some terminologies I would like us to learn today concerning incomplete or unisexual flower. There are some terminologies I would like us to learn today, which is very, very important in this context. Now about incomplete or unisexual flower. So let's talk about types. Let's talk about types of unisexual or incomplete flower. Okay? Types of unisexual or incomplete flower. Types of unisexual or incomplete flower. Types of unisexual or incomplete flower. So we are here in this part type of a flower which you call it incomplete flower. So incomplete flower or unisexual flower has got different types. So types of unisexual or incomplete flower. So we have various types of unisexual or incomplete flower that we are going to talk about today. So let me talk about what we call dioecious dioecious plant. Let me talk about dioecious plant. Dioecious plant. Dioecious plant. Let's talk about dioecious plant. And from dioecious plant, we can have an incomplete flower in those kind of plants. Dioecious plants. Dioecious plants. Now we are talking about a plant having flowers. And this plant, when you're saying die, what does what die means? Die means two. So we can have a flower. We can have a flower. Now we are talking about dioecious. Okay. So dioecious plant, we can talk about plant with the unisexual flower separately, plant with unisexual flower, plant with unisexual flower separately, flower separately, but on different individual plants. For example, popo. For example, popo. I want to explain this. For example, popo. We can talk about popo. So, we are talking about types of unisexual flower. So, this type of unisexual flower, we can find it in a plant by the name dioecious plant. Okay? Types of unisexual flower. So, this type of unisexual flower, types of unisexual or incomplete flower, we can get it in plants that are actually referred to as dioecious plant, like popo, whereby the male and the female part of the flower are found in different plants. Unisexual, whereby we say unisexual flower, a flower with what? Either male or female parts only. Now, a flower with either male or female part, male part and the female, dioecious plants. Any question? So, a type of unisexual flower we can get in which type of a plant? Dioecious means two. Mono means one. Okay? Mono means one. So, let's talk about dioecious plant. Let's talk about monoecious plant. A plant with unisexual flower separately. A plant with unisexual flower separately, unisexual flower separately, but on different, separately but on the same, but on the same, different is the other one, on the same, but on the same plant. For example, maize plant. For example, maize plant. Monoecious plant. So a type of unisexual flower, we can find it in a plant which is known as monoecious plant. Okay? A type of unisexual flower, we can get it in a plant which is known as monoecious plant. Now, monoecious plant is a plant that has unisexual flower. Separately, they are separate, that's why they are unisexual, separate but on the same plant. Separate but on the same plant. That very plant. Like for example the maize. Let's say this is a maize plant. For example, these are maize plant. So these are maize plant. It has got the leaves, and so on. I love here we are having the part of the plant that is developing. Now that is going to form now the maize itself. Okay? So these are maize plant. Let me make it thick a bit. So normally it has properties. Okay? So these are maize plant. So this maize plant is an example of a monoecious plant. So this monoecious plant has a unisexual flower. Remember, we are talking about types of unisexual flower. We've said we have complete flower and incomplete. So we are in the incomplete flower. So in the incomplete flower, we can get incomplete flower in dioecious plants. We can get incomplete flower in monoecious plant. Monoecious plant like maize. So we have the male part of the this is the male part of the flower. This is the male flower. This is the male flower on top here, and this one is the female flower. This is the female flower. So this is the female flower. Okay? So the flowers are so soft, nice looking, like the wig. Alright? Like the wig ladies put their heads, you know, like the wigs, the what? The wigs and what? The wigs and which other part? Which other? The braids. You know, they look like braids. The ladies' plaits, they look like braids. So is the female. It resembles, you know. Very good. So that's the female part. So you find that this is unisexual, but the male and the female part of the flower are separate, but on the very, very plant. You good? Exactly. So that is what you call a unisexual flower, which is contained in what? Monoecious plant. For example, of a monoecious plant? Yes. That's it. Now let's look at another type of unisexual flower. Then I'm going to ask you this. Ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask you this. Now let's talk about another type. So far, how many types of unisexual flower have we talked about? Number one? We've talked about two, right? Number one? Types of unisexual flower, not types of flowers. Dioecious plant, whereby we have unisexual flower, right? And also we have the monoecious plant, whereby we can also have unisexual flower. So unisexual flower, we can get it in dioecious plant. Unisexual flower, we can also get it in monoecious plant. Nice. Let's look at another one, another type of unisexual flower, or incomplete flower, incomplete or unisexual flower. So we can talk about staminate flower. Let's talk about staminate flower. Staminate flower. When you hear of the word staminate, what rings in your mind? Staminate male, right? Yes. Yeah, when you hear of the word pistillate, what rings in your mind? Female. The female. Very good. You guys are good. Now, staminate flower has only, it's like we are repeating, has only stamens, or you can call it androecium, or male parts only. Male parts only. Male parts only. It's like we are talking about this. We are having the male part only. You can just call it a staminate flower. Okay? So now, if you are talking about monoecious plants, in a monoecious plant, we can have the staminate flower. In a monoecious plant, we can have the staminate flower, and also we can have the pistillate flower in that very plant. You good, man? In a monoecious plant, this is a monoecious plant, we can have the male flower, we call it the staminate flower. And also, we can have the female flower, we can also call it the pistillate flower. So, staminate flower has only stamens, or androecium, or the male parts only. So inamaanisha hivi, in a monoecious plant, we have staminate and pistillate, right? So we have staminate and pistillate. Very good. Now let's continue. Let's talk about pistillate or capillate flower. Pistillate or capillate flower. Pistillate or capillate flower. Pistillate or capillate flower. You can call it pistillate. Pistillate, or rather we can call it capillate. Capillate, or that is androgenation. So has only pistil. Has male part only. We can talk about popo. Popo has got the male part only. It is separate. But when you're talking about the flowers themselves, a flower only that has got the male, like that of a maize, it has got the male only, we call it a staminate flower. Female only, pistillate or capillate flower. But the entire plant, this one is monoecious, right? So in a monoecious plant, we can have the male flower and the female flower. What name do you give to the male flower? Staminate flower. Alright? Yeah. The male flower is known as a staminate flower. What name do you give to the female flower? Pistillate flower. Pistillate or capillate flower. Now, so those are the types of unisexual flower. Alright? Unisexual flower. So in other words, it's like we've done a repetition here, but it is good. We've done a repetition here, but in another way. So we've said that, in short, we can say that unisexual flowers, we can have this pistillate and staminate. So when you're looking at the dioecious and monoecious, that's when you can have the pistillate and the staminate in those kind of plant. That's when we can have the pistillate and the staminate. Now let's continue with another type of the flower. So how many types of the flowers have we looked at? I'm not talking about the types of incomplete flower. I'm talking about the types of flowers. So far tumeangalia ngapi types of flowers? Types of flowers ni mbili tu. Just look at two. Number one, complete. Number two, incomplete. So under incomplete, we've looked at the pistillate, staminate, and in androecium, in monoecious plant and dioecious plant, that's when we can have the pistillate and the staminate. Alright? The pistillate and the staminate. That's when we can have such. Now let's look at another type of a flower. Let's proceed and talk about another type of a flower. And this type of a flower, we can call it solitary flower. Solitary flower. Let's talk about another type of a flower. That is number 3. Because number one type of a flower, we talked about the complete flower. Number 2 type of the flower, we call it what? Incomplete flower. So under incomplete flower, that's when we talk about staminate, androecious plant, monoecious plant, dioecious plant, and the pistillate. But now let's go to type number 3. Type number 3. Type number 1 was complete. Number 2, incomplete. Now let's go to number 3, solitary flower. Now, who is lost? Maybe you're lost somewhere. I can bring you back. Now let's learn about solitary flower. Solitary flower. Now, solitary comes from the word solitude. Means one, right? Means one. Solitary flower. It's just a single kind of a flower. Okay? Solitary. It's like one. Alright? Now, solitary flower. So, what is solitary flower? So, solitary flower is a flower which occurs singly. Okay? Flower that occurs singly. So, flower which occurs singly. Flower which occurs singly. A flower which occurs singly is known as a solitary flower. Singly. Alright? A flower which occurs singly, like we can have, like, for example, a rose flower, for example, or hibiscus flower. Okay? So you can have a flower like this. You see, so it occurs singly. So we have the petals there, we have the petals there, and so on. We have the male and the female part there. Okay? So it occurs singly. So it occurs singly. So just to do a sketch. Now, so this is what you call a solitary kind of a flower. So a flower that occurs singly, so you call it a solitary flower. So it's known as a solitary flower. A flower that occurs singly. Yeah? Maybe for example it is your birthday. Yeah? Then your friend brings you a single kind of a flower. Happy birthday. Hey, happy birthday. You see? A single kind of a flower. Then you get excited. You get excited until you don't eat very well. So that is a singly kind of a flower. Solitary flower. Very good. Now let's talk about another type of a flower. We can call it inflorescence. Inflorescence flower. Inflorescence. Inflorescence flower. That is like the opposite of solitary. Inflorescence flower. We can talk about inflorescence flower. Inflorescence flower. Okay? Now about inflorescence flower, it does not occur singly. Okay? It's like a cluster. It's like a cluster being produced in cluster, you know? Many. So let's have inflorescence flower consists of flowers that grow in cluster. Consist of flowers that grows in clusters. Okay? They grow in cluster. You can I have a diagram here about the inflorescence flower. Maybe you've come across it. You can even check it after the class. You can have a flower like this. You can have a flower. Let me have a drawing. A bit of a drawing here. So you can have a plant here. So you can have a drawing here. So these are flowers. These are flowers. So you find that they grow in cluster. They grow in cluster, and this is what you call inflorescence flower. So they grow in cluster. So it is a type of inflorescence kind of a flower. Inflorescence kind of a flower. Okay. So this is the leaf kind of a structure. We call it the bracts, and they are colored. So these are bracts. And it's a leaf structure, very, very important. Now we can talk about another type of a flower. Let me talk about another type of a flower so that it can be good. We can talk about another type of a flower. We call it epigynous, or we call it inferior. Epigynous, or we call it inferior flower. Epigynous. Is it okay, Wendy? Yeah, so you can call it epigynous or inferior flower. Epigynous. So epigynous. epigynous, or you can call it inferior flower. You can call it inferior flower or ovary. Inferior flower or ovary. So, in this kind of a flower, we are looking at the position of the ovary. Okay? We are looking at the position of the ovary. Is it above other floral parts or is it below other floral parts? So the position. So we are giving this type of a flower a name epigynous based on the position of the ovary. Where are ovaries located? Is it above or below the other floral parts? Okay? So epigynous flower is a flower, when you're talking about epigynous flower, is a flower whereby the ovary is located. It is a type of a flower based on the position of the ovary. The ovary is located below. The ovary is located below other floral parts. Is located below other floral parts. For example, in apple. For example, in apple. So we call it epigynous or inferior flower. At times you may come across pictures of this in paper 3 or even paper 1. Okay, pictures of this kind of flowers. Then you are told you identify the type of flower. So you have to be very, very attentive on this. Now let me erase this one, then you continue. Okay, so let's have a drawing of this. So we are giving it a name based on the position of ovary. We are giving it the name epigynous flower or ovary based on the position of the ovary. Now let me have a drawing of such. So we have the stigma here. This is the stigma. We have an ovary. This is the ovary. Now, as you can see, the ovary is below other floral parts. The ovary is below other floral parts. The ovary is located below other floral parts. So it is below. So it is even below the sepals. Let me put it below more than it is. Now, so the ovary is just but below other floral parts. So this is a type of flower based on the position of the ovary. So if the ovary is below other floral parts or other parts of the flower, so if it is below, so it is below sepals, it is below androecium and gynoecium, and also it is below the petals. So this type of a flower, we call it inferior flower or epigynous flower or ovary. So this is a type of flower based on the position of the epigynous or inferior flower, based on the position of the ovary, based on the position of the ovary. So normally you can see it maybe in practicals, in picture form. Flower, you see? So you don't need to look up in the sky or in the ceiling. You just write epigynous flower or ovary. Nice. Hypogynous, or rather we can just call it superior flower. Hypogynous or superior flower. So this is epigynous or inferior. it is a type of flower whereby the ovary is below other fluoroparts. So it is below other fluoroparts. The other fluoroparts are just but above. But for the ovary is just below. So it is inferior. So the other name is epigynous flower. Epigynous flower. We call it epigynous flower. So let's have another type of a flower. Let me erase this one. Yes, Monica, you're good. Happy New Day. Very good. So let me erase this. And talk about hypogynous. Hypogynous flower or ovary, or you can just call it superior ovary. Hypogynous flower or superior ovary. You find that ovary is located, the ovary is located above. That's why it's known as superior. It is located above other fluoroparts. Above other fluoroparts. For example, in hibiscus. For example, hibiscus flower. For example, in hibiscus flower. So let me have a drawing of such. So this is the stigma. So this is an example of hypogynous. So it is above other fluoroparts. Like in this case, it is above the sepals. So sepals are just but below. So this is an example of hypogynous flower or superior ovary. Hypogynous flower or superior ovary. So the ovary is just but above other fluoroparts. For example, the sepals here. So it is above the sepals. So it is an example of hypogynous kind of a flower, hypogynous flower, hypogynous flower. Okay, you can also have another type of a flower, perigynous ovary or flower. Yeah, you have a question? Oh, nice. Now let's have this diagram, then we continue. If you have a question, just post. About flowers, types of flowers, and so on and so forth. There's types of flowers, which will be good. Now let me erase this one. Then we talk about perigynous flower. We can talk about perigynous. Perigynous flower. We can talk about perigynous flower or ovary. So we find that in this one is that all fluoroparts are located are located at the same level, for example, rose flower. So they are all located at the same level. They are all located at the same level. So let me have perigynous. Let me have perigynous kind of a flower. So you find that all of them is like they are located at the same level. They are located at the same level. So let me have this perigynous. They are all located at the same level. So perigynous flower. They are all at the same level, most especially the sepals and the ovary. They are just at the same level. So that gives us what we call perigynous kind of a flower. So that is perigynous kind of a flower. Perigynous kind of a flower. Gynoecium, monocarpous gynoecium. Say the pistil, which is the female part. The pistil has one couple. The pistil has just look like this. No, we have pistils that have got different couples, but this one has got only one couple, just one. Has one couple, just like that, monocarpous. Okay, monocarpous. So the gynoecium is just one, just like that, monocarpous. We call it monocarpous. Mono means one, monocarpous. So the pistil has one couple, and that is one part, just like that. You know, there are those that have got several. That's why we are talking about monocarpous. Also, we have what we call polycarpous gynoecium. That is monocarpous gynoecium. We also have polycarpous gynoecium. This is mono. Mono means okay. So let's talk about poly. Poly means what? Poly means many, because di means two, but poly means many. So two or more. We can talk about two or more now. So polycarpous. Let's talk about polycarpous. That is the female part of the flower. There are those plants that have got only one part of the female part. That is monocarpous. We have those that have got two and above, poly. So as for this one, we can say the pistil has two or more couples. 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 Now we have two types. We have two types of polycarpous. Types of polycarpous. We have two types of polycarpous. Types of polycarpous. We have two types of polycarpous. Number A or one, we have apocarpous gynoecium. apocarpus gynoecium. So for apocarpus gynoecium, this one refers to polycarpus pistil. Refers to polycarpus pistil with free carpels. With free carpels. I'm going to have a drawing of that. Free. They're just but free. It's with free carpels. I'm going to draw that. So we have two types. We have apocarpus and syncarpus. So apocarpus gynoecium, it refers to polycarpus pistil. Free carpels. I'm going to draw that. You can be able to see. So they are free. They are free. They are separate. They are free. You know, we have those that are fused. So if they are free, we call them the apocarpus. If the carpels are free, we call them the apocarpus. If they are fused together, you can call them the syncarpus. So I'm going to drawing here. Yeah. Then we wind up. So they are like this. They are free. They are many, and they are free. So there are many. They are many, but they are free. You know, we have others which are fused together, but these ones are free. So we call them the apocarpus. The apocarpus. They are free. We have those that are fused. They are polycarpus. These are polycarpus gynoecium. They have more than two and above. And we can have those that are fused together, tunazita apocarpus. And we also have those that are fused together. We call them the syncarpus. Let me look at the last one, syncarpus, then I just release you so that you can go and rest. Yes. So the last one, on this time, you have the last one. We can talk about number B, type of polycarpus is known as syncarpus. Syncarpus gynoecium. Syncarpus gynoecium. You find that about syncarpus gynoecium, type of polycarpus gynoecium with fused carpels. With fused for example, hibiscus flower. I'm going to come with it in the next lesson. The hibiscus flower. They are fused together. We call them the syncarpus. Like they are fused together, and it's like they share a common tube that has got different style. They are fused together. So they are fused together so that they have a tube which you can just call style. So it has got several styles in it. Several styles in it. So they are fused together. Okay, so that is what you call syncarpus. Wow. So let's refresh. And let me ask you a question, kidogo. So let's mention the types of flowers that you know. Types of flowers. Types of flowers that you know. According to what you just told, complete flower, incomplete flower, epigynous, based on the ovary position, hypogynous, perigynous, polycarpus. Okay? Now, types of unisexual flower or incomplete flower. Types of unisexual flower or incomplete. Dioecious, so we can find it in dioecious plant. Dioecious is not a type, but we can find it in dioecious. Dioecious is not a type, but it's a plant, right? Dioecious plant. Okay? Monoecious plants. So the type of flowers there, we can have the staminate and the staminate flower and the pistillate, or we call it the capillate, right?
Yes.
That is it. So go and practice. Practice at home. Read. Go through questions. In case you encounter difficulty, you can just consult. So in our next lesson, we'll be talking about pollination. In our next lesson, we'll be talking about pollination. And pollination now will mark the climax of the topic. Pollination will mark the climax of the topic. Will mark the climax of the topic. Very good. For those many remarks, you can enjoy your time and see you in the next lesson. Bye bye. Thanks.
Wait.